Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is level 2 of the lesson 12 presentation for September 5th. And I just completed on level 1 a presentation all about sun gazing and how to eat light and how that is necessary as the basis of getting enough energy, getting enough gas in your car in order to make it go. So there's one more question that is coming up from that teaching. We'll start off level 2 with that, even though we're going to move into different topics. It's a good question from Pedro, who says, can you send someone light? And the answer is yes. I would say that's definitely a question for the advanced level, because it's kind of like saying, can you breastfeed? Like, we are used to eating food ourselves, taking in nutrition ourselves. The answer is yes. Under the right circumstances, you yourself can create nutrition and send it out to others. In order to do that, it has to be under the right circumstances. You have to have the right anatomy. You have to, blah, blah, blah. And you have to have enough stored up energy yourself to be able to do that. So yes, each one of us, as we accrete more light, I'm eating light from the sun, I'm connecting to the stellar network, all of that light is coming into me. And you could almost imagine it as like starting off as a very dim bulb or a skeletal figure that then gets fleshed out. Don't try to feed someone else. If you are still a very dim image, or if you are still a skeletal figure, you need to get enough extra energy inside of your energy banks to be able to radiate outward. But the answer is, at a certain point, when you become bright enough, spoiler alert, we all are stars, we all become stars, you radiate. You send out energy and light to other people. That is what love is. That is literally the embodiment of love. I say this all the time, but love is a tone. Love is a tone that we make. We move through time at the right rate, one moment per moment. When you're receiving the same amount of energy from the sun as you are emitting back to the sun and back to your environment, that is love. So yes, the real answer is we are supposed to be not only receiving, but sending out. And the previous presentation was also all about the pineal gland, which is a transceiver. I focused mostly on the idea of receiving with the radio station inside of your mind. However, it is a two-way transceiver. It receives and transmits. So we are meant to receive light, energy, and consciousness from the sun and the stellar network. We're meant to eat it like eating good food from our mama and grow up big and tall. And we are also meant to send that energy out. Send it out to others in the physical sense. Send it back to the sun in the sense of a biofeedback loop. So I said when I do sun gazing, I breathe in, the energy fills up me and fills up my energy banks, and then it does like a loop around and shoots out my forehead and goes back and connects with the sun. That, going back and connecting with the sun, that's crucial, because the sun actually is not unidirectional. It's not just always constantly sending out light and energy to us, and we're just gobbling it down like hungry hippos. We're supposed to also send that energy back to the sun, and that we're in this balance. That's what love really is. It's balance of sending and receiving. So I say all of this really clearly and Pedro says, is that a way to heal others? I love the way your mind is thinking, because you're like, hey, I got a good, sorry, I'm knocking into my station over here. Pedro's thinking like, hey, I got a good thing going. How can I share this with others? That is the perfect attitude when you have that, like, coming from the right direction. The antithesis would be, hey, I'm getting all this wonderful energy from the sun. How can I keep it all to myself and never share it with others? Like, that's the antithesis. So Pedro, you're embodying what we're supposed to be doing here. And yes, it would be a way of healing others, because healing is really about nutrition. It is really healing on a profound level. It's really about giving people energy and structure that allows them to transcend their being not at ease, their dis-ease. So if you really heal someone, like if someone is doing something like whatever, they've got an addiction, they drink too much, they drink tobacco, they smoke tobacco, whatever it is, healing them means not just like you're taking away their pacifier and then they still exist in a state of being, troubled inside, but you're giving them the nutrition that they need to no longer be disturbed or perturbed inside, and the structure, new mental structure and nutrition that helps them to behave and function in a completely new and different way. All of that comes from the sun. So when we grow more and more, like let's say I'm doing great. I'm getting $500 worth of sunlight in my bank account every day. I'm super rich in the sense of sunlight, and my energy is super filled up in my body, and I'm very bright. Let's say, you know, my non-physical body is very radiant, is what I'm trying to say. Then I've got plenty to share. And that's what we're supposed to transmit back to the sun. And also we're supposed to shine like a light, like a candle, burn like a candle, and share that light with everyone that's around us. And what does that look like? What is the expression of that? So it might be in the form of words, warm music that we sing with our mouth, or it could be in a performance of music, or it could be in something that you create, like, you know, a shirt or a painting or something like that. It could be in the food that you create. It could be in mechanical apparatuses that you invent. It can be in the way that you are athletic. It can be, so when the things that I'm explaining, none of this is like touching someone else's body. Do you understand? I'm not saying in order to heal someone else, you have to go up to them and be like, oh, your arm is hurt. Let me put my hand on your arm and then your arm will feel better. It might not be like that. It can be non-local. So when you read a book that's very inspiring to you, someone else is literally feeding you with their life. They're like, they've got good ideas, they've got good structure, and they wrote it in the form of a book, and you read it, and you literally got nutrition from that book. So that nutrition, it's inspiration. When we inspire one another, we are sharing that inspiration that comes from the sun and the stars with each other. We are, you know, being intermediaries, and that's what we're supposed to share and, you know, feed each other. So inspiration can be, hey guys, look at me, I ran this marathon and you can run a marathon too. Or I built this thing and you can build this thing too. Or I did this thing and you can build this thing too. You know, it's like inspiring other people. Or I lived my best life and you can live your best life too. Or I transformed from this diseased state into this healthy state and you can do this too. So it is not healing. I think many people erroneously interpret it as, I'm going to monkey with you. Like, I'm going to move this around and move this around and move this around, and then you'll be all fixed up. It's not really like that. It's more like saying here, like, you need all this nutrition, you need fats and proteins and carbohydrates, and you need the right structure, and then you get to put it all together and kind of, you know, put yourself into a better format by doing it. Okay, good question. Hold on, I get to that. Pedro says, so you can heal them physically and mentally, the psyche. Yes. Real healing comes from first healing the mind, and then the distortions of the body come secondarily. So, like teaching people about epigenetics, that is a healing of the mind. The proliferation or expression of cancer. People have that and they think, oh, cancer happened because it's written in your DNA and it's inevitable. It's fated to happen because it's written in your DNA. Once you give someone that critical idea structure that says, no. Just because something is written in your DNA does not mean you have to experience it. It exists there as a potential, but you can close those pages so that it's not actually manifest. This is epigenetics. Once we as humans start to learn about epigenetics, it's like, whoa, wait a second, that is the healing concept. That means you don't have to develop cancer. You don't have to develop these things. Or the idea of jumping from body to body in time. That's a healing thought. Because before you have that thought, you think, oh, you're just fated. If you've got this broken body part or you've got this diseased body part, then you're just going to keep on having that diseased body part. But if you think, hey, wait a minute, I'm on this timeline over here where there's diseased body parts, but there's this timeline over here that is totally healthy body. And there's actually a pathway that I can do to jump across from here to here and go on to the healthy pathway. That is a healing thought. It's like saying, this thing is possible. You can do this thing. And then the mentality structure, the mental structure, the thought structure that says it is possible then leads to transformation at the physical level, where either cancer is transcended or cancer is prevented or whatever thing that needs to be transformed is transformed. So the healing that really happens, like I'm saying, because I think some people are like, I want to be a great healer. It's a noble desire, but I think a lot of the time it comes out of ego because people are like, there's something wrong with your arm. I will put my hand on your arm and then I will make your arm better. And then I'll take the credit for making your arm better, which is like, again, like this is it's noble to want to do this. But real healing would be if you give someone a new mental structure about where is the origin of their disease or their discomfort coming from. How can they transform their body? How can they transform their experience of moving through time? So it's very, very noble to want to ease discomfort and fix people's bodies. And also, your body is your artwork. Your body is your personal expression of your belief system and all the things you've ever done and all the things you've ever thought and all the things you've ever eaten. And it's really important for each person to have the freedom and take responsibility for their own body. So there's serious issues about, like, someone else is going to come along and put their hand on your arm and fix your arm. Like, I think in a lot of it is like real healing is each person taking responsibility for the creation of their own experience and becoming empowered to the point where they can create a better experience. So my whole approach in coming here as Aurora has been about sharing ideas that instead of being like, okay, I'm going to find everybody's sick, I'm going to like poof, wave my magic wand, poof, you're better, poof, you're better, poof, you're better. You know, your hemorrhoids are gone, your broken leg is fixed, your eyes are clear, you're feeling better now. Instead of doing that, that's like just treating the symptoms. And we really have to look at what is the origin of disease. Where does disease come from? Where does decrepitude come from? Where does death come from? All of that comes from distortions that are happening on a genetic and energetic level, and transcending those distortions with a concept like flying rainbow lasagna is how I understand real healing. Like, yeah, you don't have to experience those things. We can change our whole perception of reality. Pedro says, so you can heal them physically and mentally. Psyche. Pedro says, I understand that it's better to show people the way and take away their cobwebs. Very good. But in case of an emergency, oh yeah, I mean, you know, if there were some kind of an emergency, especially if a person is incapacitated or if they're unconscious, like, it's very difficult to heal yourself and transform your belief system and your thought structure if you're unconscious. Like, yes. So you're wanting to know if you can do sun gazing and then get enough energy inside of your own body. If someone is lying unconscious, bleeding on the pavement, can you help them out? Like, yeah, I mean, absolutely. We're supposed to help out others, especially someone who might be at the point of a profound crisis like that. I would never step over someone on a sidewalk and be like, you know, like, fix your own self. That's not what I hope you understand. That's not what I'm like at all. So yes, but what I'm trying to say, because I think it is a very noble and compassionate place to be coming from, to say, I want to fix and heal others. And it's also it's the naive or innocent approach. Like, when you're very, very new. When I say naive, I don't mean like something bad. I mean like a person who's new to anything. I'm like, oh, I see all the suffering. I see all this stuff that's wrong. I want to fix and heal it. That's a very noble and good approach. But it's also like, don't just stamp out fires. Don't just like stamp out the sparks. Look at where the source of the fire is. And then what you're doing is using your energy in a very focused and effective way, not just putting out peripheral fires, but looking at what is starting the fires and how do we act. That's real healing and how we actually do it. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your wonderful questions. So I wanted to talk a little bit in level 2. I have just a little bit more time left for being able to talk about the inevitability of what we would call ascending, as opposed to the inevitability of death, and what these models look like when I draw the time field. So if I go to the whiteboard, and you guys are at this point in the advanced class, totally experts at this, let's clear everything out. To move this aside so I can kind of see a little bit better. There we go. So I draw the time field all the time. This kind of vortex shape, right? And I always have the central column going up, which is the path of least likelihood. And it's the path of least likelihood because there's only one of those timelines. And there are countless number of these other red timelines on the side that are the timelines that end in the membrane of death. And one of the big questions here is, well, what if someone dies? Like, if I see them die, does it mean they didn't ascend? And the answer is, from your perspective, you might see them die, but what actually happened was they switched onto a different timeline. So now I'm drawing overlapping timelines. And I'll get into, like, you know, in practical examples of this. So these are 2 lives and they overlap. That means they lived at the same time. And they both have central paths of least likelihood that end in infinity. So that's a very hastily drawn infinity sign there. And then you could draw green timelines over here. This is, you know, Mr. Green over here in the green zone. My pen is not that exact, so just bear with me. We've got red life and we've got green life. And The graphic representation here shows you, let me get a totally different color now, where I'm highlighting this central core timeline and this central core timeline. They do not overlap. So each of those infinity timelines, or each of those paths of least likelihood, do not overlap. So let's say this black dot. This is your black dot of awareness. Now the black dot of awareness over here is focused on your infinity timeline. Now it is focused over here on one of these timelines that ends in death. This area is the area of coincidence, where two lives actually overlap. Those are the places where you can actually meet someone else in reality. Your timelines overlap. That means you lived in the same time and the same place, same planet, same time. You could have gotten in a car and driven to their house and had an actual conversation with them. Even if they lived, across the world, there was still the possibility that your timelines overlapped. As opposed to if you look at this area over here, if I'm making a squiggle on this area, none of Mr. Green overlaps with Mr. Red. There's no way that Mr. Green could ever experience Mr. Red where I'm making this scribble. So there are some areas of the time field where there is a shared experience, some timelines where everybody is experiencing the same reality, and some timelines where you're no longer experiencing the same reality. And this is a refinery for consciousness, this whole little apparatus, what's going on here. And what we are doing is refining from the periphery to the center. And by the time you get refined to this center, you are no longer touching on the timelines that are the timelines of these other people. Like what it might look like to other people, because you were here, that was a shared timeline. Then you were here, that was a shared timeline. Oh, then you were over here. That's no longer a shared timeline. To them, you died. And then you moved on to this timeline over here. Oh, to them, you're still dead. And then you moved on to this timeline over here. And that's your timeline of eternal life, where you are becoming more and more and more refined and more divine. This lesson in the recorded lessons is called the I Am God Circuit. And it really focuses on this moment where I'm making this little wormhole up here. The whole idea of what happens in that moment when you reach, call it the last moment of the last chapter of this level of your life. And I make a very big distinction here between that, I'm just drinking a little bit more water, and the elevation of ego. Because there are some occult systems that erroneously elevate the ego to the level of divinity. And I would even say that the worship of Jehovah, the God of the Judeo-Christian Bible, is a worship of essentially an ego that is not really divine. That when I look at the examples of behavior of God of the Bible, that those are the examples, I'll go back to my face, those are the examples of behavior of an ego-based being, like sometimes capricious, sometimes violent, sometimes inconsistent, not the personality characteristics of a divine being that has totally refined itself to the point of connecting with the stars and identifying with the stars. So level 1 of this recording, I was talking all about how when you reach out your tendril of attention, you attenuate. Whatever you're attenuating to, you're touching on, you identify with it, and you even start to think that thing is me. So when you're touching the sun and you're sun gazing, you're touching it, you're saying the sun is me. I'm the sun, and I'm also all of those stars. And that is real divinity. That is real I am God consciousness. What we're supposed to do, we're supposed to have this experience of being more and more and more refined until we get to this moment in time when instead of dying and having to recirculate back to the beginning and trying it all again, what we do is we reach that moment of going through the little tiny wormhole, that moment of convergence where everything in our entire shared experience everything distills down to that moment. It's an incredibly profound moment. This is not some little stupid thing at all. This is a big deal. It's really big. And also to understand this, for many people, when they hit the membrane of death, that moment of death is a big deal too, because they get like a little flash, like, oh, this is what it's all about. This is who I really am. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. But that's as their sweater is being unfurled. Like I've used the example of giving in your hard drive. Where's my little hard drive? Nothing is within easy reach, and my dog is on my lap. But the little hard drive from a couple of weeks ago. You do all of your living and you don't try to transmit any of it back to the sun. And then at the moment of death, it's like to the sun, it's like, here's all of my recorded experiences. And the sun is like, oh, that's what's been going on with you. I had no idea. And for many people, when they reach, or egos, when they reach the membrane of death, in that moment of dying, they're like, oh, now I really know who I am and what I was supposed to be doing all along. And now I'm finally receiving all this inspiration and guidance. Far too late for it to be relevant to that level of the journey, okay? So it's kind of like saying the musician and the conductor-composer have not been effectively coordinating their movements. Like you didn't get the information from me, I didn't get the information from you, you hit the membrane of death. And when you reach that moment of going through the wormhole as opposed to hitting the membrane of death, what it means is that your journey as a musician and the music that you've been emitting is finally synchronized perfectly with the written score from the great composer, the information and feedback from the conductor. Everything fits together. And there is no longer a distinction between yourself as an individual and that entire system, because you have attenuated to that entire system. You're identifying with the entire system. You are the stars, you are the sun, you are that. And the thought that you think when you do this is, I am God. And I always make a little joke when I say this. I don't mean that you think Aurora is God, Aurora is God. However, each one of us has that individual journey where you think you yourself are God. So now I have to draw what is happening on a neurological level. And I know there's wonderful questions, and I'll get to your wonderful questions. Let's draw neurons. So, okay, first I'm going to just draw really roughly down here. All these lines I'm making in red. This is the beginning point of the time journey, right? That's birth or zero. And then this is, the level of hitting that wormhole, right? So we've got this gap where I'm making wavy red lines. There's this gap that we are traversing in time. We're going across time. Well, neurons act in exactly the same way. If I draw two neurons, this is like a long nerve fiber, and that's the end of the fiber, and this is the end of the neuron. And then there's another end of a different neuron and another long nerve fiber. This is how information travels along the nerves in your body. So you've got, here's a nerve impulse. It could be a thought, it could be a feeling, like a sensation, it could be anything. Oh, look, I just got to the end of that nerve. And then there's this gap in the middle between these two nerve fibers. This is called the synapse, where I'm making the red squiggles. And the gap between them is called the synaptic gap or the synaptic cleft. And when the blue nerve impulse, reaches the synaptic cleft, it can't get across unless it transforms itself into a bunch of chemicals. So let's make some little dots. I'm making little dots. I don't know if you can see them, but it transforms itself into a chemical format, so it can then be transmitted across the gap and reach the other nerve and stimulate that other nerve, which then continues the signal onward on its journey. And this, as I said, whole entire life apparatus, this whole entire time zone here that you're in, is the effort to get across the synaptic gap of a higher dimensional being. That when you make that leap, you are like this little, nerve impulse. When you successfully make that leap, you have the idea, I am God. Because you're not just you. This is one neuron in a great brain. And you're not alone. You're not doing your journey as one lone soldier flying across the time field. There's a lot of different consciousnesses that are all trying to make their little leap. And so I should draw 10 million neurons here. If I draw, there's another one down here. Like, just imagine that I've drawn 10 million lollipops, and they're all lined up, and there's all these nerves going, or nerve impulses going in these different directions, and they're all coming from over here, and they all get to here, and they all come from over here, and they all get to here. And then what they all do is figure out what is the successful route to navigate the synaptic gap. They figure out what is the way to get across. How do I make that leap from one level of electron shell excitation to the next level of excitation at the next shell? And the answer is through trial and error. If you can't see, but if you can see, you are guided there directly, and you get across the gap and you keep on going. That is what we're supposed to do. We are supposed to, like little red squiggles, figure out how do we get up this central column, as opposed to, you know, over here where I'm scribbling. How do we not hit the membrane of death? How do we keep that nerve signal or neural impulse going until we get to here? And then we don't stop. We made it across the gap. Then we continue on the next nerve fiber until we get to the next gap that we have to jump across. So every place here, that where I'm making that line, where I'm making that line, where I'm making that line, these are all individuated nerve impulses that all are having the same realization. When they jump across that gap, effectively, they all think, I am God. Because that great brain, that great neurological structure that they are within, that they are traveling as nerve impulses within, is divine. That's what the stars are. That's what the stellar network is. It is divinity. So each one of us is here in this experience. My little sculpture is over there. My dog is on my lap. In the experience of navigating the time field, figuring out how we can go from being slanted, being at a diagonal, at a catty corner, in order to right ourselves and then be going directly up and down that central core timeline where, oh, I'm doing it, you're doing it, my dog's doing it, the animals outside and trees outside are doing it. Everything is trying to figure out how to jump across that neurological gap in order to make it to the other side and keep on going. It's not like, oh, I jumped across to the other side and now I don't have to ever do anything ever again. I'm done. It's not like that. It's like, oh, I successfully jumped across the other side and now I get to continue on my journey. Continued life, continued consciousness, continued traveling through time, or, going through the time field. Sometimes this thing goes dark. I don't know why my microphone acts so, it's not microphone, my system over here acts so strangely, but sometimes it just goes dark. Okay, well, whatever. Let me just drink a bit of juice and then I'll go to your questions, which are wonderful. Thank you for understanding. So SJ, good to see you. Thank you for tuning in. Sarah Jane says, can two infinite timelines intersect? That's a beautiful question. So in the recorded lesson, I draw this little picture about what the timelines look like, all of the ascension timelines look like. And I'll clear all of this out. And I'll draw. They all essentially look like this. So let's say this big giant black dot is the convergence point or the source or the end result or the goal that we are all moving towards. And let's say all of these blue lines are the infinity timelines. That's all infinity. This is how it's technically structured. It's not a perfect drawing, so don't take it too literally, but none of the central core timelines overlaps. This is such a very good, specific question. They don't overlap. So that means it can be a very lonely journey as an individual, because essentially as each one of us is becoming completely aligned with our own divinity, having our own ascension experience, and with our own continued eternal life, we are tuning away, like in the mind, in the sense of our mind, focusing our awareness away from all of these other timelines. So we're not in the periphery over here where we might overlap with other people. We are focused, oops, Bubba did go back to the thing. I don't know, it's not working, sorry. Go back, oh, good. We are focused on this central curly timeline. So the answer is each individual journey through the time field, becoming an ascended master or the ascended, perfected, divine version of who you are, you end up being focused on that central timeline and you're not experiencing the periphery. That means it might appear to many other people in your life as if you have died. as if you are no longer in that overlapping, shared area of commonality where the two time fields are overlapping. So, and that's why, so all of this, in order to eat pure sunlight and awaken your pineal gland, you have to have a very strong sense of self so that you maintain your own identity, even when you begin to identify with flowers or abstractions or whatever it is. In exactly the same way, you have to have a very strong sense of self as you're going through this divine perfection and ascension experience. Because you will be moving away from other people in your life who might be friends, family members, lovers, or pets. Let me use my cat as an example. So this is Cheeky's on the piano making music. Before I had Cheeky, and you guys can check and see, this is the little dog boss right down here. She's super awesome. Before I had Cheeky, my dog boss, I had a lovely feline furry overlord, Miss Ashley the boss. And this is back in January of 2017. It's almost a year and a half ago at this point. We had a divergence of our timelines. I should draw this. Our timelines diverged. And I actually saw this all happen in a vision where I was on my timeline over here, which had been overlapping with her timeline over here, right? And what happened was I refocused my journey going, from this direction where that blue line is slanted to going in this direction where that blue line goes up and down. And that means I focused away from her. And similarly, she was going to in overlap land with me, and she refocused onto her divine neuron hopping, synaptic gap leaping version of self. So each one of us refocused our journey towards our own divine self. But what that meant was we were no longer in the area of coincidence. So in that experience, to my cat, it appeared that I died. From her vantage point, she saw me suddenly drop dead, whatever, aneurysm exploded in my brain or whatever it was that happened, I suddenly died. And she, on her, central up and down timeline, then had to be adopted by friends or move somewhere else or, find a different living situation. And what I experienced from my vantage point is that I stayed alive, but she died. She got attacked by another animal and she ended up dying. And so she was no longer in that shared area of overlapping timelines that I was in. So I've spoken about this a lot. The idea that when energy and consciousness enter into those interstices, those membranes between worlds, like a meniscus between worlds, you don't want to think of your loved ones as like hanging out there. It's technically hell. You don't want to think of your loved ones as big, because a lot of people think like, I want my loved one to be alive. Let me drink. I loved my cat a lot. I did not want to think of her as being non-existent. I wanted to think of her as still being alive. So a lot of people have that afterlife programming where they say, oh, my loved one is still alive in heaven. That's not actually the kindest thing you can do for them. And I'm not casting aspersions on anyone's faith or anything like that. The best thing you can think of them as being alive on a different timeline. So not that my beautiful cat, died on my timeline, but she's somehow physically disembodied and living, in a magical fantasy land somewhere. That's not the kindest thing to do to her, because if she's not on the right timeline and she died, then she should be unknit like a sweater and go back to the beginning and try again. She should not be hanging out on the interstices, which is technically hell, all right? None of our loved ones should be hanging out in hell. They should dissolve instantaneously and go back to the beginning and try it again until they reach their own perfect moment of divine perfection where they recognize, I am God. So my beautiful cat is on her journey to that timeline of figuring out that she is God, but I'm no longer on the journey with her. She remembers me. She's alive on a different timeline, remembering me. Oh, I remember my old owner, Aurora, who used to play loud music that I didn't like very much. And to her, I'm dead. And the best thing that she can do for me is not to imagine that I'm alive in some Christian heaven, strumming my harp on a cloud or something like that, but to imagine me exactly where I am. I'm alive on a different timeline. I moved. I lived literally after that experience, after my cat died, and our timelines diverged. I moved to a different geographical location. And clearly I do the same artwork and I do the same music, but my projects are new and different. I have new friends. I'm in a new area. I have a new boss overlord sitting on my lap over here. So I'm still alive, and actually my life has improved. Like, I have better professional opportunities and I have better creative projects going on. Like, my life is heavenly, but this is not the heaven of Christian fantasy land. So she is in that. If you, I use this as an example to say, like, if you want to imagine your friend who has passed on, or they're no longer overlapping with your life or whatever, where are they? What are they doing? Imagine them living their best version of life in a reality that's just not overlapping with yours. So friends, loved ones, pets, or whatever. And I've had far too many friends that died young of cancer. And yeah, I try to think of them as somehow they got a great art studio, or they have lots of equipment, they're using computers, they have whatever they need and they're happy there, but I'm not physically present there. And I, even when I'm thinking of them, sometimes it's funny, I have deceased friends, they come up on Facebook, like from memories or whatever. I'm always thinking, well, that person is alive on a different timeline. And that to them, I'm the person who has died. And they're looking at my memory from 5 years ago on Facebook, and they're knowing that I'm no longer alive on their timeline. So all of this, it's like, I understand grief, and I understand the psychosis that comes from grief, where you're like, I just want my dead friend to be alive, or I just want my dead cat to be alive again, because you miss them so profoundly. Instead of thinking of them as being alive in like a virtual reality or spiritual fantasy land, think of them as being alive, but on a different timeline that is their particular timeline of divine ascension or perfection, or what leads them to their greatest version of self. Pedro says, if the ascension timeline is the least likely, imagine how unlikely it is that everyone is on their ascension timeline at the same time or same timeline. I love the way you think, woohoo! So, I joke about this all the time. The big red button from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You press the big red button and the most unlikely thing happens. It's called the infinite improbability drive, or it is very similar to the flying rainbow lasagna. Imagine how unlikely it would be to have hundreds, millions, billions of consciousnesses all get together at the same time, all go from being slanted to being in alignment, and all hit that moment of having that realization, I am God. It would be the moment of ultimate novelty. It would be completely unlikely, and that is what we are experiencing. Terence McKenna, he was a great proponent of psychedelic use and stuff like that. I'm not a blanket endorsement of him or anything like that. Great thinker though, and he wrote a wonderful computer program called Time Wave Zero that essentially explored time as an algorithm, kind of like the way that the Fibonacci sequence is a oscillation, like an oscillating algorithm that relates to a medium, like a central, average between different things. So he looked at all these different oscillations through the time field that are oscillations of novelty. Novelty being described as something that is new, and so novelty being defined as something that is new and unlikely. That's a novel thing. It's never happened before. It's rather unlikely for it to happen, and it's happening. So Terence McKenna plotted on a graphic depiction the unlikelihood of different events throughout history, and saw that it made a type of music, and that the music was like a harmonic algorithm, reached a crescendo or a null point in December 21st of 2012. And it was interesting, he came up with this in the 1980s when computers and algorithms and calculations were not that advanced yet. It was only for real experts, like he was a real expert at programming like that, and when not everybody knew about the Mayan calendar. So, and again, I'm not a proponent of that idea that it's the end of the world. It's the idea that it is a moment of convergence of all of these harmonic notes that combines together into a moment of complete novelty or unlikelihood. This is what we are experiencing. And that novelty is really evident in our present level of society, drinking water. I don't want to rile you all up, but the idea that we have, a former reality TV star, billionaire, playboy, real estate mogul, being the president of the United States, this is novelty. This is not like regular what is predicted in the past, what's been, the way things have always gone on. Like, what I'm trying to say is, if the world seems like it is becoming more surreal, and more unlikely, that more and more unlikely events are happening. You're correct. You are perceiving greater and greater levels of novelty. So not only in the geopolitical landscape, but also in terms of your own personal transformation. Like the most unlikely thing that can happen would be instantaneous, profound healing for all of us. And that's what that I am God moment is. But essentially it is the healing does not just mean like, oh, my arm is hurt, I want my arm to be better. It's healing of the structure, the definition, the cosmogenesis. Who are you? Where did you come from? If you're not answering those questions correctly, there needs to be healing on a profound level to even define who are you? Who is here having this experience? Where did you come from? How did experience come into being? How is this world made? All of those questions need to be answered in the correct way. That's real healing. Because at the end, you're going to be like, who am I? I'm God. What am I doing here? I'm here being God. Like that answer, that moment, that answer completely supersedes all of the other stuff. So if you're busy being like, we have to fix that arm, we have to fix one thing, one symptom at a time, that's what I'm telling you. You're putting out peripheral fires. And instead of focusing energy in that way that disperses it, focus energy on the main, which is the main solution, the main healing, which is that each one of us is this expression of divinity. Each one of us, and the God, I'm very clear on this, like this is not the God of the Bible. This is not a bearded sky god, it is not a one-faced, two-armed, two-legged God, and it's not a God that exhibits ego, personality structures in the way it's like, you have displeased me, I will now smite you. Like not a smiting type of God, not that type of God. The God that is here experiencing all of this. Because I'm telling you, I don't want anyone to watch this video and think Aurora is a religious proselytizer talking about God. I'm really not. And I recognize in this time and place, God is almost a dirty word to some people, like ass or something like that. It's like, no, you're not allowed to say that word. So God is a very real thing. Religion is horribly, horribly corrupt on this planet. And most religions here on this planet are death cult religions. And mostly the gods that are being worshipped here are demiurges, lower level, not real gods. They're false gods that are actually ego. So anything that's divine is supposed to be a conduit that connects you to the divinity, to the stars, not something that is a barrier or an intermediary. An intermediary says, I'll connect you to that guy over there. You just got to give me some money. You give me something. You give me a little something. Give me a little something, and then I'll be happy to connect you over there. This should not have to be done like that at all. So there should be no intercessors needed. No saints. You don't got to pray to a saint. You don't got to pray to Jesus. You don't got to ask, oh, please, oh, someone. Oh, please, oh, someone. Please connect me to God. Please send my prayer to God. No, because you are divine. You are God. There should be no need for you to be like, here, pass this note on to the person that I'm trying to talk to. You are that person. You are literally a neurological impulse in that great brain. There should be no separation whatsoever from you, from that great brain. So the idea of having to ask for, pray to, or ask for intercession from, to sublimate yourself, it's like, Mommy, Daddy, can I please have this? Teacher, can I please go to the bathroom? President of the United States, can I please have this? Like, no, you don't have to ask in that way. You are it. And also then you take full responsibility. If you are God, it's like, I have to ask anybody for nothing. No, you don't have to ask anybody for nothing. And you get to take full responsibility for what we are creating in the creation here. So let me go back to more questions. Okay, Salu says, all the masters, like Aurora, are on the central timeline of eternity. Thank you for including me in the masters. And I will tell you this, the previous occupant of this body died. But I say, I died, but I did not die. This body did not die, and I did not die, and Aurora, took up the momentum of this life and continued onward with it. And I do not have any intention of dying. So yes, I absolutely identify with that central core timeline and my experience of it. And I recognize that to a lot of my friends back in Woodstock, I died. When I moved to California on many, many timelines, they see me as dead. And instead of being sad and be like, oh, Aurora's dead, she's rotting in the ground, and worms are playing pinochle on her nose, it's like, no, Aurora didn't die. Aurora is on a different timeline that is not accessible to us, where she moved to California, her health got better because she got raw cannabis juice, she got a dog and made paintings and did radio shows. Like, you know, I'm in a good spot. So yes, this is also how you can understand, like, let's say you know someone who's a super spiritual, like wonderful person, and they're doing all of the right work, and then, you know, they die, whatever, they get hit by a meteorite on the head and they die. And you're like, oh no, does it mean that they didn't ascend? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It means your timeline and their timeline no longer overlap. They transferred their consciousness to a different timeline that continued onward. On that timeline, they are alive, and you are the one who died. Maybe you are the one who got hit on the head by a meteorite, and you're no longer in that area of coincidence. And so the final big takeaway from all of this, I showed you that diagram of the convergence of all the ascended masters coming together. It's the kind of like shaped like a dandelion puff, like one of those seed heads of a dandelion with all of the convergence points going to the middle. When everybody gets to that convergence point in the middle, we all meet again. So my great friend who was, you know, going along and, you know, seemed to be a real spiritually ascended person, and then they got hit on the head by a meteorite, and on my timeline they died. That's not the last time we'll ever see them. We will interact with them again when you get to the convergence point, when you get to that moment of, I am God. They also are God, and all these other people that you knew that died are also God. But this is not the same as Christian heaven, the biblical rapture, death and resurrection as it is described in Christianity. It's a very different experience that I'm trying to describe here. Pedro says, we need ascension protocols. Are there any besides don't hit the game over, try again membrane? So that's the big one. How do you stay on the road? Basically, you stay on the road by staying on the road. You do not drive off the road. So let me just drink a little bit more water. A big part of this is what we prioritize in our daily experiences. Some people would say that doing things like making music or artwork or cultivating your body or doing things that you want to do inside of you, that is somehow self-indulgent or a luxury or something that you do, that you deprioritize while you prioritize the fulfillment of basic needs, like food and toilet paper and making electrons flow in a wire. I teach and live something completely the opposite, clearly, because I'm an artist. Like, I'm not a practical person. I'm not like, let me find the job that will earn me the most money and I will work at my job and then I'll have plenty of money. I'm like, no, let me do the thing that my inner guidance tells me I need to do, because those are life-giving activities. So activities that put you at a slant are activities that put you closer to the membrane of death. And it's when you compromise who you really are. Your boss, you're like, I want to be an artist, but your boss says, no, you have to work at this job and I'll pay you this much money to do this work. And you're like, okay, well, I need to pay my rent, so I'll do that job. And then instead of going in this direction, you begin to travel in this direction. It doesn't matter if you get 50, 60, 70, 100, or $200 a day, you're going in the wrong direction. And this is literally what our capitalistic society requires of everyone. You know what you're supposed to be doing inside. Hey, I'm supposed to be going up and down this timeline. On this timeline, I might be an artist, a musician, something that's impractical, or doing something that doesn't necessarily earn me money. You might be doing something just because you love it and helping your community, as opposed to doing something that gives you money. But society says, no, you must earn money. So I want you to go over here and do this thing that leads to your death. So the greatest ascension protocol is literally to play the music that you know you need to play. And I really believe this, that each person has that inside, that you know what music you're supposed to play. You don't need me or anyone else to tell you, hey, you know what you're really supposed to be doing with your life is blah, blah, blah. Each one of us knows it inside. And it is that inner willpower to not compromise what you really know you need to be doing inside. Because society will tell you, as I said, that it is self-indulgent. What, you want to sit around all day long painting paintings? Get a job, do something worthwhile, which is basically saying, do something that society values and estimates as being worthwhile. Because society is corrupt, society is distorted, society is created by those hacked occupiers of the interstices. Society is not going to pay you to be on your ascension timeline. So if you want to get paid on your ascension timeline, you got to kind of set that up. You have to say to other people like, hey, I'm doing this valuable work that is leading me towards ascension and that, is adding to the planet, so please pay me. Because what I'm trying to say is, the corporate world is not going to pay you for your ascension, for your efforts at ascension. The corporate world is structured to basically cause death. So we also need to support one another in our efforts at living on the ascension timeline and expressing that to everyone else. So if you know someone else who's being an artist or being a musician or living their true life, encourage them to keep doing it, support them in their work, and you send out energy also that is reflected back. Like, we encourage each other, because like I said, the government and the corporate world will not be encouraging you to live your true life. And a big part of this is giving yourself personal permission. Like, you're not just some self-indulgent, stupid person that doesn't want to work hard because you want to make music or make artwork. I keep using this as examples, but you guys know what I'm talking about. You might want to grow a community garden. You might want to do something else that's not the same as, earning money in a corporate setting. You're not going to pay your taxes. That's what the government wants you to work hard to pay your stupid taxes. So yes, the real ascension protocol is to be 100% your true self, and not to allow society to dictate what you should be doing or which direction you should be going or how you should be trying to earn your money and get the stuff that you need to sustain your physical existence. And I know that sounds extremely impractical. And it's also the way I've lived my life, which is extremely impractical. But when we support one another, like when I have people that watch these videos, participate, pay tuition, buy my artwork, buy my leggings and my prints and things like that, then you are literally supporting me on my ascension timeline. And I've used this example many times before, like maybe 15 years ago, someone gave me their business card. They're like, yes, I'm in insurance. Come in for an interview. You can be an insurance agent too. And I kind of looked into the future. Like, what would it be like if Aurora was an insurance agent? Like, buttoned up to the top and I'm carrying my little briefcase and whatever. It's like, I wouldn't have a chance. I would not be on that central core timeline. I would be going towards the membrane of death, but I would probably have a 401k, but I'd be dead. That's the whole point. So it is highly impractical to be chasing the dollar. I would even say, like some people say, it is satanic to worship money. It's not worshiping it like it's God. It's allowing money to control your life and take you away from your real ascension protocols or experiences that you're supposed to be having in this time and place. It's like, these are the experiences of the food that you're supposed to be eating, not the junk food that society wants you to eat. And society will literally pay you to eat junk food. And many corporate positions are just sinecures or padded stuffed shirt positions that you don't even really need to be there. It's just busy work. It's just busy work. In school, they used to make you fill out paperwork. Like, do your worksheets, everybody, do your worksheets. That's the adult version of everybody do your worksheets, except you have to be there. You have to drive on the car, on the freeway, and then go to work and do your worksheets, and then you'll get your 401k. But of course, you are going to the membrane of death, and you will die. And you will not find your true self, because you have to use your inner willpower to be on that timeline to be your true self. So I have definitely exceeded my limit of the recording of what I usually try to stick with, but I want to make sure I'm getting to everybody's questions. And I did a little bit of a truncated presentation of what the level 2 materials are, but the recorded lessons are very worthy of checking out, because I do more examples, more concrete examples of what these diagrams look like and what it means. What I want you to understand, like with words, it's so easy to misinterpret them. The diagrams, it's like math. It's like there's no misinterpreting 1 + 1 = 2. There is no misinterpreting, like either you're on this timeline going in this direction or you're on this timeline going in this direction. And so I try to use the visual representations to really get through the distortions of the hacked operating system of words in order to be able to see like the way we're actually supposed to be living. So yeah, I think a big part of hitting that central timeline is having the wisdom to recognize that everyone around you can be giving you very false feedback and erroneous information about where you're supposed to go. Mommy and daddy, teachers, government, religious leaders, they can all be wrong. They can really, really, really all be wrong. They can all be telling you to go in the wrong direction, and that you have to have your own innate divine connection, your own GPS that tells you, I need to go here because that's what this and this are. That's your own GPS that guides you in the exact direction you need to go, regardless of what external society is telling you to do. And I recognize that is almost the literal antithesis of how many people live their lives, where they are almost completely befuddled, where they're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Mommy, daddy, Jesus, somebody else tell me what to do. And that's like the opposite of what you're supposed to do. So if you don't know what to do internally, don't turn to mommy or daddy or Jesus. Please do turn within and go on your own journey of introspection to find a reconnection to your own innate desires. Because when we're little children, we all know what we want to do. You're like, I want to run around and play right now, or I want to lie down and have a nap here right now. Like, you know what you want to do. But as an adult, the idea of what you want to lie down and have a nap right now, like, how self-indulgent, how stupid. But maybe that is the crucial thing for you to do in order to be on your ascension timeline. So all of these things that society looks at as frivolous or self-indulgent or otherwise inappropriate might be the exact very thing that you might need to do in order to not die. And if you're busy making sure, like, am I allowed to do this? What do you say, Mom, Dad, am I allowed to do this? Like, then you're not going to be on that central timeline. So even if families disapprove, even if the government disapproves, even if whatever religious leaders disapprove, each one of us has to do the complete unique thing. Pedro says, I feel a little bit like I hogged the questions here. Don't be that way. I hope everybody found them a little useful. Yeah, this is total. Please do not censor yourself or limit anything at all. A big part of giving these presentations, like, I think my own thoughts all the time. Sending them out to others and having others reflect them back is huge, very big for my own growth. Yeah, so not only do I find Pedro, I find your thought processes worthy and interesting. That's the whole point of having the class, is to have other good thinkers in this class share their own thoughts and show their own wonderment, and how we all learn and grow from this. And how, like, if I'm trying to send out a particular idea or a particular pattern, I need to know, hey, how are others perceiving this? How are others in the band hearing this music, and how are they making music in response? Because, like I told you, when I first came here to this world, and I've been trying to share these ideas for a long time, I would say things in a certain way, and kind of from the looks of other people, I'd be like, okay, it's not getting through. How do I get through? So the questions are wonderful, and each person has a valid viewpoint. Like, Pedro, you have a valid viewpoint and your own, excellent thought process that you are allowed to wonder about and share with others. So yeah, and please do not censor yourself or feel whatever in any way that you're not allowed to fully express yourself here. The only reason I keep everybody muted while I ask people to ask their questions in the chat is because it ends up being distracting, that there's too many voices talking on the recording at once, and I've heard what it sounds like, so that's the only reason why I do that. But yeah, and Chloe says, so others are saying they found it useful in the class, and Chloe says, I love them. Who doesn't question ascension? Because, ascension in this world that we're in, it is either presented as a religious mania, like the idea of rapture, or the idea of death and resurrection, or, it is presented as some kind of like possibility that no one's ever done. Many people have ascended, like this, and it doesn't have anything to do with the Bible or which particular God you worship or anything like that. It is inevitable. It is an inevitable metamorphosis. But a big part of it is that it's like, once you have jumped that gap, you've jumped from this neuron to this neuron in this gap across life, like you're over here, you're on this track, you're in a different world. You're not still here. That's the whole point. You're not still here. You're definitely not here writing blog entries. So the beings that have ascended, that have transformed and metamorphosized, and their consciousnesses have continued on their journey, they're not still here. Like, that's a really big takeaway. So you can't ask them, like, hey, what was it like? How did you do it? Blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. Like, they are not here to answer. So we have to encourage one another on the journey and be like, hey, like, we can do this. And this is something that is very, very possible. Yes, SJ says, thanks for shining your light on all of us, Aurora. I'm happy to do so, literally. So, that's what I do, guys. I eat tons of sunlight. I get lots and lots of energy. In terms of light, I'm like a million billionaire. I got lots and lots of light inside of me, and that is my job. My music from my DNA is very loud. I'm not amplified. I'm just like an opera singer who is very, very loud. And it causes all sorts of troubles and headaches for all the evil occupiers of the interstices. They're like, we hate Aurora. We hate listening to her. No. And I'm like, no, like I'm very, very loud. So yeah, and I'm very happy to share my vitality, inspiration, and techniques for how to actually, do it yourself. I'm happy to do it. This is my life-giving activity. So I share a little bit with you guys about, some of my troubles, my journeys or whatever. I've overcome a lot of neurological problems in order to be here and be able to walk and talk and, do all this work. If I were the insurance agent version of Aurora, I would not be healthy and transcending those health problems. I would be experiencing those health problems. What makes me on the central timeline where I'm happy and healthy and active and everything like that is that I'm uncompromisingly doing what I'm supposed to do. Eat a lot of sunlight, get a lot of ideas, make paintings, make music, make videos, and share it with other people. No matter how impractical or unusual or novel that might seem to society, I know that that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So, SJ, thank you for that recognition. And thank you to everyone who's in this class who receives the wonderful things that I send out and then reflects their own goodness back to me like this. If I were isolated and not able to connect with other people, I would not really be doing my real thing. And so I'm very happy to be able to do this work and connect with everyone. Like this is it is life-giving daily activities for me. Pedro says, we want to get fat from eating your light. I call this lasagna for a reason. It's food. This is real food. And I'm happy. I'm like, in life, actually, I like to make food and share it with people. When I lived back in Woodstock, I had a pretty good social network, and my centrally located apartment, I was always like, come over, we'll have food, we'll do something fun, and I really enjoy cooking. I make nice pizzas and stuff like that and sharing with people. So yes, I love making food and sharing it with people. I would not be happy if I was well fed and I had a beautiful plate full of lasagna and everyone else was starving or somehow troubled. So that's also part of why I'm here as a walk-in. I wouldn't be happy sitting on some higher dimensional cloud being like, life is wonderful, and all the poor humans are suffering down below. I'm like, no, we got to make this whole thing a whole lot nicer and a whole lot more fun. So I'm so happy to share lasagna with everyone, and I love it when you appreciate the food that I send out, and you're like, oh, you want more lasagna? I'm like, I will make some. I'll make some with good lasagna, good vegetables in it. Yeah. So thank you very much to everyone who's in this class and to everyone who appreciates what I send out. And that also is very encouraging. Literally, that word encouragement means from the heart. It means from the heart. Like, keep going, keep your heart going. So yeah, my heart is really in it. Thank you very much. I think that's actually a good thing to end on. So we're going to say thank you and end on that note.